Good evening, everyone. I'm Kate Fulkerson, CEO for the Reston Association. As many of you know, the association has a long history of ensuring that our pathways are cleared of snow as soon as possible after a storm to enable residents to access village centers and different amenities. RA has a phenomenal maintenance staff that is dedicated to doing this every year. Several of them are with us here tonight, so we'll get to hear from them directly. While it's a great effort, there are many miles of sidewalks and pathways in Reston that Reston Association does not own or maintain. After receiving many calls and emails from frustrated members and trying to say it's not our responsibility, this past February I asked the Board of Directors for permission to enter into discussions with Fairfax County and the state to enable the association to clear portions of state and county pathways for the whole community. The board said yes, and they directed the association staff and committees to develop a community-wide snow removal mobilization plan to help educate the community about the shared responsibility for snow removal and to create opportunities for grassroots efforts in collaboration and planning on a local level for improved snow removal solutions. This is why we have invited all of you here this evening. It is clear from your presence that, like Reston Association, you're interested in the importance of removing snow from our public walkways to increase mobility and accessibility for all in the community. We have much to discuss together this evening, and I want to tell you a little bit about what we have been doing. Actually, I want to give the opportunity to our Senior Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Resources, Larry Butler, to tell you what we've been working on since February. I'm very honored to have all of you here this evening. It is always awesome to have to put more seating in the room as people come in. It's not snowing yet, but you know it's coming, and we have an obligation to do the right thing for all in the community and helping ourselves. So welcome this evening. I appreciate you being here. I'll turn the floor over to Larry.
Thank you, Kate. Good evening, everybody. Who here remembers last winter? Did you love it? Ken loved it. All right. How about 4 winters ago, 2009, 2010? Okay. Who here has never experienced a winter in Reston with good amounts of snow? See, we're all experienced here then. Perfect. So first I want to thank you all for attending. I want to thank the RA staff who are here this evening, and you're going to hear from at least one more of them here in just a few minutes. I also want to thank the Fairfax County Public Schools representatives who are here this evening, as well as the Department of Public Works and Environmental Services. So the purpose of this meeting, as Kate said, is really to start a dialogue. After last winter and the one 4 years ago, if I get my math right, there was a lot of talking around the community about what's being done, what's not being done, who's responsible for what, and all those kinds of things. And so what we want to do is just start the conversation in the community amongst people who do it, as well as people who are currently not doing it, who we hope will be inspired to do it at some point. So we'll see if that happens, but this is a start. So as Kate said, we plow our 55 miles of pathways, and you're going to hear about that. We want to give you a little perspective. Mike's going to get up here in a couple minutes. But people don't always use our pathways. They often choose like a crow does. Say, well, I'm going to go to this school, and that's the closest way to get there. And sometimes that's right down the road. Or maybe on a sidewalk, it isn't clear. So last winter, one of the big issues was the fact that there were school kids walking down roads, South Lakes Drive as an example. And part of the reason for that is A, we had a lot of snow. VDOT, plowed a lot of that snow, a lot of which got up onto the sidewalks. And the adjoining property owners chose not to remove that snow. And so we think that's a problem. And so we think part of the dialogue tonight is how do we engage our neighbors, whether it's a cluster, condominium association, individuals, anybody that is a property owner adjoining a public sidewalk or facility like that, to sort of work on behalf of the greater good. But there are some places that have requirements for that. Fairfax County is not one of them. So we are relying on the good graces of the property owners to help the broader community effort. As Kate said, we're working on a couple things specifically. We're working with Fairfax County right now and looking at the potential of actually plowing the pathways that access the metro station and then the future metro station. So that's, we're in discussions with them. We're hopeful that that will work out. I have no guarantees that it will, but we're working diligently to see if that can happen. And we're excited about that possibility. And that's really Sunrise Valley, a few parts on Wheelie, and then in the future along Reston Parkway, Sunset Hills, and things like that. Now we're also working with VDOT on getting sort of permission, if you will, to remove snow from certain sidewalks adjacent to RA property. So we're not talking about all the sidewalks in Reston, because there are miles and miles and miles of it, as you well know. But what we're looking at doing is if we can get the neighboring owners to do the sidewalks abutting the RA property, and we can make some connections that currently aren't there in these heavy snowfalls, then we're willing to step up and do our part to really set an example for the community. But it only works, we're not going to go in and clear snow on 100 feet of sidewalk. I'm sure Richie and Linda are like, no way, we're not going to do that. If, at the end of that 100 feet, there's 2 feet of snow because this property owner's not touching it and the one at the other end's not touching it. And so those are the connections and the conversations that we're really trying to start. So, again, we're just trying to start the conversation tonight, and we hope that you find this valuable. And you see these maps around here. Let me ask you a question. Who here is really on behalf of a school or representing a particular school? No one.
I was here because I was concerned about a particular school.
Oh, right. That's good. Our school first. Which school?
Lake Ann Elementary.
All right. Well, good. That's a good segue. I'm going to have Mike come up here in a second and describe what these maps are. But we do have maps of all the schools, and they're sort of instructive. And what we want, eventually, we want these maps to get in the hands of the PTA and the administrations at the school so they can work with the neighbors that are within walking distance to say, who's responsible? Hey, can you help us out here? There's this particular link that if, if that 100 feet was done, our kids would be safer getting to your school. And so we're going to continue that dialogue and try to, get this message out. What I want to do now is have Mike McNamara, who's our Acting Deputy Director for Maintenance, come up and talk a little bit about what RA does specifically for snow removal and discuss a little bit more about the maps that you have here, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome.
Hi, thanks everybody for coming. Great turnout. I definitely wasn't expecting this, but I'm going to kind of take you behind the scenes at the maintenance department, what we do. I'm sure, how many have seen the little yellow machine moving around through Reston? Okay, and it's cool, and you can't drive it unless you get special permission. But we've got 4 of those. They're Bombardiers. They're direct from Canada. They're specially made for plowing pathways, okay, and sidewalks. And now that's misspoken. They're a little bit wider than sidewalks. We can't use them on sidewalks. But we've got 4 bombs, and I happen to have 3 of the operators here tonight, which I'll introduce you to in a second. They've come because between the 3 operators and one of our snow supervisors on the pathway, they've got over 100 years of experience pushing this stuff. So, and probably most of you have not been in the woods at night in the middle of a snowstorm. You cannot find the pathway unless you know exactly where it is. They're real good at it. So we'll get to that in a second. But the maps first. Be gentle with me if you're a professional cartographer. This is my first crack at ArcView in GIS, so if you're like, oh, come on now, that line's way off. That was just my hand shaking on the mouse, okay, going across. So, but each of the maps, we basically centered around each of the schools, the elementary schools. There's a half-mile radius and a quarter-mile radius around each school, kind of denoting how far kids would walk. We figured outside a half a mile in the winter. Probably not a ton of walkers. Now, you may have one of the bravest that does it, but this just gives you an idea. Each school, half mile, quarter mile. So we focused on each school. So the one school representative over there is Lake Ann. She can definitely tell that. We just thought that, getting the kids to school is the most important focus. So that's kind of how we base each map. We do have a map from each school, so you can look at those closer. What we do behind the scenes at RA, how we do it, we do our pathways. Okay, we do certain parking lots. We do one section of street that we own, North Village. Basically, our procedure is we've got the 4 bottom operators. When the snow hits about 2 inches, we go. And we go preferably at night because it's better, it's quiet, there's nobody on the pathways, we can get it done. So when the snowstorm hits at night, it's just a perfect scenario. 11, 12, 1 in the morning, 2 inches, we call these guys, they go. It takes them an average of about, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, anytime, 4.5 to 5 hours to get through a push. Okay, barring no mechanical failure, mechanical problems. The 2 full-time mechanics are also on staff called in, and we take care of it. It takes about 4.5 to 5 hours to get a run done. They get it done clean. If it's snowing, they turn around, they gas up, they do it again. Okay, the goal is by the time you all wake up in the morning, the pathways are down the pavement as best we can and clear. Okay, that's our goal. As Larry said, there's a lot of sections we don't do. We have 3 to 4 hand crews that go out the next day and will do all the little pieces that connect our property to the pathways. We do certain sets of steps. We do our community buildings. We just make everything safe for the people that are getting in and out as quickly as we can. Our goal is to try to get that done by 1, 2 ish of the next day. So after a major snowstorm, by 1 o'clock the next day, hopefully Reston's ready to rock on their feet. Our pathways do go through every school just about. They connect almost everything. But as Larry said, there's a whole bunch of sections that, and we do a couple of sections where we shovel them 50 feet this way, 50 feet this way, and then we stop, and then there's hundreds of feet that nobody does. So we're like an island that nobody can get to it. And that's what we want to try to solve. Tonight I have Keith Kansler, Rich Zeisler, and Brett Nelson are 3 of our 4 bomb operators. Their knowledge of the pathways, especially in the dark, is tremendous. And if you need to have any questions about any of your certain areas, they are experts on the pathways around your areas. I mean, they can tell you what's up, where it turns, where they back up, what's a nook and cranny, and what a problem is. Yeah, occasionally we do run off, but it's interesting. This is Linda Thomas. She's our pathways supervisor. She runs the hand crews the next day that go out there and do the shoveling, and I think we have 8 to 9 snow blowers that we use also to clear those sidewalks and pathways. So that's what we do at the maintenance department. I mean, it's fun. Wave at your bomb operator, they'll honk at you and stuff, but stay out of the way. They've been up since 1 in the morning in a lot of cases, and they have Coke or Mountain Dew in their hand, and they're running on caffeine. But no, they do a great job, and there's no place like Reston. The pathways are usually down the pavement. When other people are wasting, in my neighborhood, I'm wasting through snow, and they just let it melt off. That Reston, by next day, we can get it done. Okay, that's it. Okay.
Just a quick round of applause for that group.
Next, we're going to ask Brian Crawford, who's the Acting Director of Facilities for Fairfax County Public Schools, to come up and talk about the school's perspective and what they do and so forth. So, with that brief introduction.
Hello, I'm Brian Crawford with the Office of Facilities Management. We do mainly the parking lot removal, so we do it through our in-house staff, we do contracting. We do contracting of our high schools and middle schools, but all the elementary schools and centers are run by our in-house staff. We have about 49 in-house members that go through roughly 150 properties for snow removal, and the rest is done by contracting. The other portion of snow removal is done by our schools, and that's done by our custodians, and that's the sidewalk removal. They have snow blowers, small snow blowers, tractors, and shovels, which they do by hand, and they try to clear all the property, sidewalks along the property of the school. Last year we had some challenges, and we helped them out by bringing in larger equipment to do the snow removal because the small push-behind machines did not work on those sidewalks this past year. We also have bought new equipment because we found those challenges throughout the whole county. It's not here, just the whole county. We're at every high school, one major thoroughfare, removing snow days after their event. So we're trying to find new ways to help out the schools, and we're here to participate fully.
Can we ask a quick question?
Sure.
What kind of coordination is done with either the PTAs or the school administration in terms of areas around the school, not necessarily at school?
I really couldn't speak to the areas around the school. I know that when we have snow removal, we'll send out a mass message to principals and custodial supervisor saying, it's time to get out there, let's clear the sidewalks. We clear pathways for you guys to park and get into the schools. Now, there are challenges for some custodians getting in here because they're coming from larger areas outside of this county, so it's not always a full staff coming in at one time. But, yeah, schools, I think, you have to ask the schools about how they participate with their PTA.
Do you happen to know the distance from the school which is not served by the county school buses? In other words, there's a certain distance close to the school in which
Right, I don't have that answer.
kids who are
That's for
living in
transportation.
that area will not be served by the county school buses, but will walk
I
to
can get you
school.
that answer.
I think that would be handy to have in order to know what area really has to be looked at in order to be able to serve the children.
Bryce, he's my coordinator for snow removal.
It's 1.5 miles.
1.5 miles.
1.5 miles.
Bryce, does that include now, does that include if there's a major road? I mean, if there's a 4-lane road, as an example, do they?
No, I think the 1.5 miles is like a general rule, but I think that if it's like a major intersection or major road, that transportation that has a special formula or something that they use that would obviously narrow that, because they don't want to have the kids crossing main thoroughfares like that.
What time do the school staff, are they called in? Are they called in the middle of the night, or are they?
It depends on the snow
working
event.
block hours?
Each snow event is different. You know, if we had one in the late evening and we get cleared by like 5 or 6, we would tell them, if you can get in this evening, please come in and clear as much as you can. If not, they come in before sunrise the next morning.
And is that a principal directed instruction, or is that a coordinated instruction? If I'm making myself clear.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. We, in facilities, we have plant monitors who oversee custodial operations, give advice, help them out. We'll contact their custodial supervisor and let them know, hey, you guys can come in. Then they will contact their principal and say, look, we got the okay to come in, we're gonna go in, and then the principal will give approval at that time.
So for our area, it's really the principal of Herndon High and the principal of South Lakes High and the pyramid below it that drive what happens.
We all drive that. It's just the approval process. Now, I have to say, this year we did add more plant monitors, and we're asking the schools let us have more of a say when they come out because of last year. So that's a work in progress right now.
Because 4 or 5 years ago, when we had the big storm, okay, for South Lakes High School, Butler drove the getting the community involved. If that hadn't happened, the community would not have been involved. And it hasn't happened since then.
On some of those larger snowstorms,
Yeah.
it becomes too much for the custodians to handle. And at that point, we have to find contractors or bring our guys in after they clear the parking lots to do sidewalks.
Or the pyramid has to be engaged to send out to the PTAs and the community and say, we need help,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how that works as far as allowing people to move some on school property or listening that situation. So I really can't speak to that.
Right. And that's what Butler,
That's a larger question.
Different Butler.
Brother Butler, did was basically circumvent, working with the school, with your counterpart, I forget the name of the guy that was there before.
And
You're acting, right? Who
yes,
was
it was probably Bill Muchler, maybe.
Maybe so. And so there was a implicit agreement that the community could come out and help clear the snow without, we had bobcats, we had everything else out there
Yeah,
doing the work.
I wasn't there at that time.
Quick question. Is there any variability in the depth of snow across your area of responsibility, or is it virtually all the same?
It's different. I mean, one end of the county is totally different from another. You have snow going in, maybe barely a sprinkle at the other end. So
What kind of impact does that have on your decision making?
As far as closing the school, that's up to the leadership team, but as far as us deploying, we'll move resources from one end to the other end.
Okay.
We're constant in communication. We have a command center that operates through the whole area.
Thank you, Brian. Next, I'm going to ask Bill Hicks, who's the Director of Maintenance and Stormwater Management for Fairfax County Department of Environmental Works, or Public Works and Environmental Services, for another couple of weeks, something like that, right? And then he's moving on to a different position there as one of the deputy directors. So, thank you, Larry. Thank you guys for coming out tonight and letting us speak about snow. Last winter, anybody have any ideas how many days we fought snow? 10?
We had 11 days of school.
11 days of school. We in Public Works fought snow for 45 days last year. That meant that we were actively involved in some sort of snow action. Not preparation, not cleaning up, but action for snow. It was a big year. I'm hopeful we're not seeing that this year. No guarantees on that. The county's responsibility, the general government county, that's where I work, we're responsible for all of the facilities that the county owns that are not schools. Now there are some park facilities, the park authority does their own work. So setting those aside, we have about 250 facilities. That includes it includes a number of roads that have not yet made it to the VDOT secondary road program. VDOT maintains your roads. In Northern Virginia, they've got about 17,000 miles. That's in Prince William and Fairfax County and all the counties in the area, about 17,000 miles of roads. We don't do that. We have very small, maybe 5-6 miles of roads that the county maintains. So most of our work is the facilities, and it's not the schools. Brian spoke about the schools a little while ago. So we're working on our police facilities, our general government facilities, the North County governmental facility in the area, community centers, shelters. We also work for about 15 of the park and ride facilities that are in the area, and we do that under contract. Everything else we do with in-house forces. And in-house forces is about 20 trucks, and we bring to bear maybe as many as 250 people working around the clock for a very big storm. So if we have 250 facilities that we're trying to tackle, the county is 400 square miles wide. It's a pretty big area. And we have 20 trucks. We're not doing it all at once. So what we've done is laid it out in a set of priorities. And those priorities are 1 to 4. And the Board of Supervisors has blessed that set of priorities. And we start tackling priority 1 and we move down the list. And this is what typically happens in an event, is that it starts to snow. Whether it's a 1-inch snow or a 6-inch snow or a 24-inch snow, while it's snowing, we are focused only on priority 1 sites, chiefly police, fire stations, those key emergency response facilities. In those priority 1 sites, we are only clearing travel ways. We're not doing full site cleanup. We are pushing snow in the travel ways. And we are shoveling snow, we're using snow blowers for the ADA accessible routes, the main route from that parking lot into the building. We're not doing total coverage. And when we're done, and these guys here can attest to that, if the snow is still falling, it looks like we haven't been there. Isn't that how it works? And everybody's very dissatisfied because the parking lot is still white, but you cannot do anything about that. So we come back, once the snow is over, then we tackle full restoration of a site. So we go back to those priority 1 sites. We do full cleanup, vehicular area, and phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 walkways. The phase 3 walkways are the walkways that are least used and in the right-of-way. So if we have a facility that has a sidewalk on the roadway, that's a phase 3 sidewalk, and we're not going to tackle that until we've done every bit of the rest of the site. So that's our effort. And so after a fairly big event, we're going to try and tackle those priority ones. We're going to try and be done within 24 hours and moving through. If it is a big event, it may take us 3 days to get through 250 sites with the resources that we have. That's how long it takes. We hit our targets every storm last year for 45 days. So that's the level of service that we've allocated as a county, and we deliver on that. And we could not do it without folks just like you and the families of folks that are really allowing those calls to come in at 3 in the morning to say, come back from the Shenandoah Valley, you got to go to work, and we got to start plowing. I'll also add that the timing of a storm, you never know whether it's coming, if it's coming. The timing of the storm really changes how fast we get to anything. Because if the storm comes at 8 p.m., most everybody's already at their house. And the parking lot is empty of cars. And so we can go out there and we can work all night long and we make a lot of progress. If the storm comes at 12 noon, the lot is full of cars. And it is very difficult to do a nice job when it's full of cars. Plus, we have 3 places we have material storage. And if we have to drive to get our salt and our sand or move our plows to where they need to be. All that traffic, you remember Snowmageddon? It took people 8 hours to get home. Do you know what our trucks were doing? They were in the same traffic you guys were in. And we cannot do anything about that. So we do our best to be deployed ahead of time, but when the storms are around those rush hours, we're fighting the same traffic that you guys are. And I'd be glad to take any questions. All right, I'll be glad to sit down.
Could you not coordinate with the state police, the county police, to have right-of-way on off areas such as the lanes, the outside edges of the lanes, in order to move your trucks around that heavy traffic? Because when you think about it, you might be stuck in that traffic, but it is an emergency for you. So could you not coordinate with the police to get them out there to move some people, just like if an ambulance comes by, you pull off the road?
We can certainly pursue that. The Emergency Operations Center is, they're co-located with the state police, and that certainly could be something that could be talked about. But I'll also tell you that the thing that the police are trying to do, when everybody's out there in rush hour and the traffic is stopped, it's often stopped because there are accidents.
Sure.
And that is always going to be their first response. And so it'll be very difficult to get them to escort county plows to county facilities at the same time. But it's not to say that it couldn't be talked about.
I'm not saying maybe a full escort, I'm saying develop a policy for that.
Certainly, and I'll raise this to OEM and see what they can.
I have a question too. So you said you had the 4 phases of priorities. Which phase are the routes to school in?
So so what we do, what county responsibilities are these disparate facilities, these 250 facilities all over the county. VDOT maintains the roadway system. If your area is not at our facility, we're not addressing it.
Well, are the schools in that list of your facilities?
No, they're in Brian's list of facilities.
Oh.
And Brian is focused, correct me if I'm wrong, but Brian is focused on the facility itself.
On the property itself.
So it looks like we're missing.
There is a gap. No question, there is a gap. And I think that's what this conversation is all about.
Exactly.
Anything else?
Thank you, Bill. So Bill described a situation, and I'll elaborate on it just a little bit more. So VDOT, who we requested to participate in this meeting, and I do not believe anybody is here, which is very unfortunate, they do not do sidewalks. Their focus, you heard, just in this area, 17,000 miles of roads. That's a lot of road. It's way more than our 55 miles of pathway in 8 miles of sidewalk. So one of the problems that we encounter, and part of what we want to have the dialogue, particularly with clusters and condominium associations and things like that, is VDOT will come along and they plow, let's say you get a 15-inch snowfall, they're plowing it, and where are they going to push it? Pushing it on our sidewalks or on our asphalt trails. So we may, as Mike described, we'll get out there at 1 in the morning and we'll get it nice and clear, maybe do 2 runs, and then, when the snow keeps falling, VDOT comes by and there you go, there's brand new 8 inches, but it's only snowed an additional inch, but there's now 8 inches back on the pathway. So, that's a continual battle that we have, and some of our roads and pathways along the roads are worse than others. But what we really want to do is have this discussion with the adjoining owners and say, think about, if you're hiring a contractor, clusters and condominiums, what would it cost? And this is, something that, we haven't gone out to get estimates, but I think it would be easy enough for clusters and different associations to do. Say, you're going to come in and do our sidewalks in front of our townhouses or condominiums, and you're going to do the parking lot. What's the additional cost for you to spend another, hour or 2 while you're on site to go out and do the sidewalk along the road frontage? I mean, that's kind of the key question that we want the clusters and the cluster leadership to ask their management companies, because they're the ones who typically contract for that kind of thing.
What's the contractors, if, say, a cluster does that, adds on some extra sidewalk outside of their little community, what's the liability that the contractor could face?
Well, we're working,
cluster.
there's a permit process with VDOT, and oddly enough, I think Mike actually has a copy of the email from VDOT's sort of regular prompt system, and maybe you can share that.
It's this is their response if you ask them, who shovels the sidewalks? Who shovels the VDOT sidewalks? I mean, all these maps have miles and miles of VDOT sidewalks in front of South Lakes everywhere. And this is their response. It says, neither the Virginia Department of Transportation nor the county clears snow or ice from the public walkways. In addition, neither the state nor the county has any legal requirements for property owners to clear public walkways. However, while not legally obligated, sorry, I forgot my glasses, residents and businesses are asked to help keep walkways safe for the community. When possible, they are asked to clear snow off the sidewalks in front of or next to their property so that pedestrians, especially school children, those with disabilities, and the elderly may walk more safely. I've contacted them several times. We were in this permit process. And if you go on the website, it says, who clears snow from the VDOT sidewalks? And the answer is, you do. We do. You do. So that's, we're still seeking permission, written permission, to do certain sections of their sidewalks so we can link some of our important routes together that go to schools. But basically their answer is, they're not going to do it. You know how many roads they have, and that's their number 1 priority, which is good. But they're not touching their sidewalks.
The problem is, we're in a rather small cluster, and we do our sidewalks, but when they come and plow 10 to 12 inches over it again, that costs us another tough couple rounds for our landscape and snow removal company to come out. That is not necessarily easy to put into our budget with the limited funds that we have.
That's
So,
an excellent.
I don't particularly think VDOT has a satisfactory answer.
No. Plus we have a situation where across from our entrance of our cluster, there's a community of apartments. And they obviously contract out for their association of apartments or condos to have everything removed from their sidewalks within them across from us and their parking area. But they are plowing it right across waterfront onto the sidewalk and our property continually.
So we're doing it 3 and 4 times.
Have you had a discussion with the owners of
Every
the
single
apartment?
year. And it's ignored.
Wow. So there's a question in the back, and then we'll go here.
Yeah, Larry, I think the other fallacy is that most clusters, while they do the best job that they possibly can for their contractors to take care of their roadway, very few clusters are paying somebody to shovel their walkways. So it's the walkways, and quite honestly, quite honestly, there are a lot of property owners who are shoveling the walkways adjacent to their home within their clusters. It's the problem that the clusters, for instance, along South Lakes, and there aren't that many, there's a misconception, there aren't that many that back up to South Lakes, okay, that have sidewalk that they can clear, okay? But that isn't the cluster that's gonna do that work. That is perhaps an individual homeowner. And the issues that are raised right here complicate that, because RA comes and plows over, the county comes and, VDOT comes in and plows over. It's a constant problem for John Q. member who is shoveling or so. But the idea that a cluster can simply add something onto their existing contract to have their sidewalks, or additional sidewalks shoveled, is a misconception. Because in most cases, those contracts don't exist.
Right.
Well, but I think part of the conversation is, could they exist? And that's kind of the question.
And I will say, number one, from a cluster that has sort of mid to higher range quarterly dues, absolutely positively no. We could not afford to add the cost of snow removal of the sidewalks, of our own sidewalks, let alone any bordering sidewalks, to our cluster fees. That is completely out of the question. Number two is a question of liability.
That's the big
We are not going to take on the liability of snow removal for public sidewalks, because we have, in the past, we have been sued for somebody falling down on the street. And we can't take that on. We will not if somebody wants to do it on their own, fine, but if they get sued, that's their problem. As a cluster association, we cannot take on that liability without some sort of formal permit that absolves us from that question. We will not do that.
Let me just ask you a question. Would individuals in your cluster
No.
go out and, like, say, let's have a shovel out?
We do not have that kind of diversity of free, available, healthy individuals who have a vested interest in areas that are 50, 100 feet from their homes. I mean, they're just not happening.
Richard, and then
The lady from South Bay, too.
No, I was just gonna say, we've asked our contractor in the past about doing the sidewalks, and it's very expensive, because it's all has to be done manually. Per square foot, right, versus doing the road, it's exorbitantly expensive.
The average is 85 per man per hour, minimum of 2 hours per hour.
Right, yeah. And we're a small cluster.
We're only 18 homes.
18 homes,
Okay.
yeah. We can't spread the cost across 100 homes.
The more spread out the houses are, the more the cost per individual would be.
I mean, you definitely have to do a huge dues increase.
Okay. Well, this is all good information, and I think it's all part of what we're trying to do is get what are all the facts that are at play, and is there another way to approach it perhaps that nobody's thought about yet, like enlisting all the high school kids. But they have no incentive to clear the sidewalks to get it.
Yeah, we got a high school.
Right?
School's closed, that's okay.
Yeah, my question is, we do have snow shovelers, and we do it by shovel. But we don't have a place to store snow blowers. I have Bombardier envy and Bobcat envy. So I would like to see if Reston would open up a dialogue on storing homeowners association snow removal equipment, because there are a lot of people who would, if given a snow blower, have it delivered, would snow blow 3 or 4 hours. And, just figure out the cost, but I know the homeowners association I live in, we love to buy a snow blower, but where do we store it? I mean, we want a bobcat, but
It's a little more expensive.
but if, you know, there is the facility down there, and you have all the toys, and we look at them, and we go, you know, I go, as I'm shoveling, I wonder whether all of those Reston snow blowers are blowing snow, or are they just sitting there while I'm shoveling? And I understand the liabilities, but, you know, there are ways to get around that. Because the bombardiers, when snow is falling, should not be popped. And if you're short of drivers, and I know they cost, there are volunteers. I guarantee you, there's a volunteer right there who wants to drive the bombardier. And what do we do when it snows? We stay at home, most of us, because we can't go anywhere. And so that's the piece I would like to throw out there, to include possibly homeowners associations that don't have the folks to do it. Drop a snow blower where you have a community effort saying, hey, we need a snow blower pusher here. We'll deliver the snow blower, and you link up and we clear the sidewalks.
Larry, if I may. That is really the intent of why we're here tonight, is to come up with ideas to how we can help each other to increase accessibility and mobility. I hear you about not having people, and forgive me, I'll stand up so you guys can see me. I live in a cluster in North Reston, and I've got this huge pathway. When I come out, it's not part of my cluster. It's part of the state. The state put it in, and it is packed with snow. And for our cluster, we got a small little outlet that connects into the Reston Association pathway. Our cluster, people who live next to it, shoveling, but they ignore that sidewalk. That sidewalk is used by everyone who lives along the lane next to the cluster I belong to get back and forth to the bus stop every day when they go to work. And the kids stand there to catch the bus in the morning. And it's piled with snow. We got all these calls last year, got the emails, great frustration around the community. What do we do about that? Take responsibility. That's what I said to those in my cluster. Kind of hard to do. I try to keep a low profile as the CEO of the association. But it was very frustrating to me when I would go out in my cluster and I would see the sidewalk in front of my townhouse. You know, one of my neighbors, they've taken from their house all the way to the mailbox, and they stopped. What happened to the senior they live next to, who is housebound? Did they take the time to take that shovel and make sure that they could get out or get the car out? No. I got frustrated. So I put my diplomacy hat on and put a gentle suggestion out to the cluster list. Meet me out at 3 o'clock. Let's see if we can't get some of this knocked out so we can all have access and we can get to our cars or get to the mailbox so we can put the trash cans out and they're not piled up on those snow heaps. And let's see if we can't get that VDOT sidewalk so that those who use it to get back and forth to work can get there. Interesting what happened. Boom. Out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I had my neighbors out helping me to get it done. We had the next snow event. Wow, it was a long year last year. Come month of March, you know, but you think we're going to be done. We're going to have a spring. No, we get hit again. I didn't have to send an email out. Before I had my boots on, I've got a 10-year-old, can't wait to get back out on the snow, right? Before she's dressed now, and what do I see? I see my neighbors out doing what I suggested about 3 weeks before on their own. It takes us to help ourselves. So tonight, what we want to do is hear where the problem areas are. What can we do to help clusters who don't have the ability to do it, who are concerned about risk, coming up with an idea of supply management. Where can we store this stuff? How can we get it to each other? What can we do to help ourselves? The community of Reston is full of phenomenal volunteers. people who care about their community and want to help. It's about accessibility and mobility tonight. And one of the things we want to do is generate ideas. Get them on the table, figure out what we can do to help each other. Understanding that there are people who need help. We just need to know where those areas are. My staff are ready to go. They are here tonight because they really wanted to be here to find out what the problem areas are, and they look forward to working with you in a few minutes to see what we can do to help give us access around the community. Access to schools, access to get to the grocery stores. How do we deal with the big snow pile after we've plowed through, and then God bless VDOT comes through and piles it up again. I cannot tell you how frustrated my crews get, and they're here now, when they've done all that work and then they've got a snow pile like this and they're like, really? I just did that, right? Am I right, guys? Yeah, frustrating to them. We got to come up with solutions tonight. That's what we need your help with. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a quick question. I think your idea is great, and with my experience, we've been here 1 year. We got here in the snowstorm, the day it started snowing actually, the movers moved us in. But we have a phenomenal president who has been a very good example, and I think our community does take care of each other. My concern is the sidewalk that's in front of Lake Ann School where there's no adjoining properties. The sidewalk like directly in front of the school seems to be done, but none of the rest of the sidewalk of the school seems to be done, or the VDOT sidewalk but it's all school there. There's no houses or anything. And one day I thought, oh, the snow, it's manageable. I'll go out there and I'll do it myself. And I tried. I have 4 young kids at home and I couldn't do it myself. So I can see how getting neighbors, where the cluster is and that whole sidewalk on North Shore where people's property is, and rallying together, that's a great idea. But where there's no other houses, it's just school and the public streets, that's the biggest problem. And kids are slipping and strollers can't get by, and hundreds of kids go through there. So, I mean, I'm willing to do it. I just don't have the time every day.
Yeah, you need the assistance to do it. And
so when I go to the PTA or the school to find out ideas, or I don't know who I would collaborate with, right directly in front of the school's property,
right,
like on the public street side.
Yep, right across from Fairway Apartments. I used to live in Fairway
yes.
when I first moved here, and used to walk across the street to school. I hated that. We were so close, and I ended up walking across the street. But these are the ideas that we need to talk about. PTA, I heard, is a powerful force. And how we break into that and work with the schools to figure out the best way to make connections to get the word out. Reston Association can help be the conduit for that information. We can help push that out, but we need to work with you all tonight to put all the ideas on the table. Yes, ma'am.
If you start to monetize it, I mean, what would it cost to have areas around VDOT sidewalks, snow removal done by the Reston Association, if we were adding to our annual dues? I mean, do we have figures? Is there any estimate whatsoever? Because, you have what, 18 houses?
Yeah.
We have 53, other places, but, it's just.
We've got the data on the linear feet
footage
of what that is, and almost all of that is handwork, as you all have acknowledged. I mean, we're not taking the bombs on a 4-foot sidewalk, because we'll tear up the grass next to it. Because those are 5.5 foot thick parking. So we could come up with that figure, and the difficulty for us is that we're using, for the most part, full-time staff and some seasonal staff. But to do that additional level of engagement and the time, and to do it in a responsive manner, we'd have to be like this, oh, it's about to snow, we'll get this quick gear up, and we don't want to have frankly, the carrying cost of having people waiting around for a snowstorm.
Yeah, but I mean.
But I think that's a good idea.
I mean, we have to look at contracting. I mean, if you expect us to look at contracting, you have to look at contracting.
That's a fair comment.
Well, right, and that's my initial comments, where we have sidewalks adjoining our property. Kate has made the commitment that we'll do that, but it doesn't make sense for us to spend your money to go out and do that if the adjoining properties are not doing it.
Yeah, now what's adjoining? Because we've got we have the VDOT sidewalk, we have the property that's owned by VDOT, And then we have our property. Our property does not directly adjoin the sidewalk. It is VDOT right away. We don't own it, we can't touch it. We can't remove the trees. That's not something that we are allowed to do.
Yeah, I'm not sure where this is.
Well, virtually any place that VDOT is. We're on South Lakes and Soapstone.
Okay.
Both South Lakes and Soapstone, those two areas, that's VDOT back at least 5 feet from the sidewalk is their property. It's not ours.
It seems to me that part of the problem, and it's not the only problem, it seems there are many problems depending on the various circumstances. But in a place like South Lakes, particularly near the high school, where you have long stretches of sidewalk which are above the road, and apparently are VDOT sidewalks, and probably on the other side, that is the inner side, is also VDOT's property. It would seem to me that we should follow the admonition of the physicians, and that is, do no harm. And VDOT, instead of coming along and plowing more snow from the streets onto the sidewalk, should avoid doing that. And there are many ways to do that, and then that would leave the pathway at least only full of snow that fell from the sky and not from VDOT.
That's totally unreasonable.
Why is it unreasonable?
It's unreasonable because you need 2 lanes. Yeah.
No,
Why
I'm not saying that you leave the snow in the street.
Well, then there's
And
nothing else.
in
It's the street,
in-
and then it's the sidewalk, and
In New York City,
Woods.
they managed to do it, as well as many other cities.
They haul it away.
yeah, and we don't have, VDOT doesn't come around with front-end loaders to haul the.
They don't have to do it everywhere, but they could do it near places where there are
That's
schools
not-
and pathways to schools.
I think what
There could be a conversation with them.
Right, and I think what Irvin's talking about is instead of, each lane, they plow the one lane into the median and they plow the other lane, we'll say, onto the sidewalk. But if you plow both lanes, it takes more coordination with the plow trucks to plow both lanes over to the median, and then you're not pushing that onto the sidewalk in key areas. And that's that's something that we can have that conversation with VDOT, a couple of touch with sometimes. Yeah, so we have put, I think, did we put paper at each table?
You want for them to take notes? Or
Yeah, we'll just if they have ideas.
Oh, no, yeah, I have questionnaires if they have follow-up questionnaires, but I'll get some big paper too.
We are happy to answer other questions that you may have, but what we thought we'd do is, just talk at your table of what are some of the ideas, that maybe haven't been mentioned here that you can leave with us and, the other speakers that we can, chat about and, perhaps look into.
And then also at each table, we have Fairfax County Public Schools has a whole sheet on snow shoveling volunteers, so I'm going to put a bunch of those on.
She's getting ready to put those on the table for you too. But we want ideas. We want to figure out how to help ourselves on this. Again, we're hearing a lot. Please generate some more. We're going to be coming around to hear what you have to say. Okay? Yeah.
What is your name?
I have elected a volunteer from your table to speak up on behalf of your table. So we're going to start in the back right. And what we'd like you to do is share an idea or two that you came up with. Hopefully you captured it on paper so that you can hand it to us. Do we have a spokesperson? This mic is bouncing in and out,
You
Joe.
gotta do that, look,
Lower
We
there.
need to put that on the budget, get better mics.
Are you speaking?
Okay, so a couple of things. One, we've talked about clearing sidewalks and pathways. We have to fill the gaps in the sidewalks and pathways so that they get cleaned out as well. So that's the first step. We have to have sidewalks and pathways that go where we need them to go. Second, it doesn't matter that we want the community to help. We need to be able to tell the community where we need their help. There needs to be some kind of command central process that can help to coordinate where that we need somebody at Sunrise or we need somebody at Lake Ann, where we need the help. Third, we need better coordination within FCPS. A lot of silos that have to be broken down in order for this to make the community work around the schools. And I think a lot of other people think that the key is the pyramid. The pyramid reaches out to everybody. And so one of the questions that came up is what about people who are willing to help but don't have kids who are not in the pyramid? Well, when we did this once before, the pyramid, it has tentacles. So Pat's picks it up. Reston now will pick it up. The word goes out. So the key is that the pyramid has to send out a note that says, we need help at a specific school or a specific schools, and everybody has to come together and start working, but it's getting the message out.
All righty, thank you.
No, that was great.
You good? All right, we'll go to this table. Looks like you are, you're standing up.
I forwarded as a question, can Reston Association identify or collect information on critical paths and link that information to volunteers, clubs, potential equipment, and also potential contact?
It's a good question. Did you capture that, Kate?
Can I have your paper, please?
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, that's a great one. Excellent idea. All right, we're going to go here. All right.
Okay, so a couple things that we came up with was, first of all, figure out the liability issues, who's responsible for which locations, identify the problem areas where things need to be shoveled, and then also we were thinking that at some point you kind of have to step past the boundaries and think, well, if VDOT's only shoveling the roads and Reston's only doing the paths, unless they're asked to do more, and clusters are doing their locations, or if they're not physically able, they're not doing their locations, but what's left in the middle? And so we were thinking that if we could find some people who were willing to and were physically able, who would just get out on wherever there's still area left to be shoveled and would shovel that area, that would be extremely beneficial. And so then we were also thinking that communication was a big issue, and if we can talk to each cluster individually and tell them that they are each responsible for their locations and more locations if other people can't actually do it, that would be great. And then we were also talking about the PTAs because they're really good at getting the word out to various locations. So those were our ideas.
Thank you very much. Do we have a... All right, you okay?
So a lot of these points have already been touched upon, but basically 3 general ideas. One is identify key and known problem areas. We know the schools and the areas around the schools, the bus stops and any other areas, and from that data generate a plan so that we have a plan in existence before the first snowflake falls, and also that plan is prioritized. I like the way Fairfax County prioritized, where you have like number 1 and you hammer away at number 1 until the snow stops falling and number 1 is completed, and then you start moving on. So that we come up with, we're not trying to figure out what we're trying to do when the snow is coming down. We've already figured out what we're going to do. We're just trying to execute the plan before, that plan exists before the snow starts coming. Identify who's going to be doing the work, volunteers, and probably as important as the volunteers are the leaders of those volunteers, so that when people show up at a given site, they have, someone's there and who's in charge, you can say, okay, this is what we're doing. We're gonna, you know, in front of Lake Ann, that long sidewalk, I don't see that woman anymore. But anyway, that long, my kids went to Lake Ann. So, and I've shoveled that long sidewalk, though it's been a few years. So identify volunteers and leaders. Potential places would be PTAs and the schools. I'd like to see the students out there, but I know from experience that there's absolutely no motivation in the kids' hearts to get the schools back open. Clusters and condos are another place to go to. Also, Reston Association volunteers and RCC volunteers. And I'll come back to that a little bit in a minute on why I think that's key. And then if there's, you know, if anybody has any other ideas we can go to for volunteers, we're all ears. And then questions that were generated. How are we going to execute this? What is the trigger? What's the threshold where we say, okay, we're activating this plan? What are the communications? How do we get that? You know, a lot of people talked about that. How are we going to communicate? If we're pre-planning, we know what volunteers we have, we can, you know, email, phones, text, whatever, however people want to get the information. That can be done. But I also like the idea that something we didn't think about was then also just a general call to action for, you know, so that you have a pool of volunteers that you're using that we've already talked to about what we're doing, but when we actually execute this, then we're also just doing a general all call, come on out and do the work. What resources are available? There's no point in having 50 volunteers if we don't have any shovels. Can we get some snow blowers, that sort of thing? Can we bring some resources, some material resources to bear on this? And then the liability questions and implications need to be dealt with. We don't want to set anybody up for problems, and that's where I think running volunteers through Reston Association and possibly Reston Community Center, I have absolutely no permission to say that right now. But if we do, that there is, I mean, you guys have a formal volunteer program, so at least it's covering the individuals from any liability, that would be covered, I would think, through there, though you guys know that better than me. So that's us, that's what we came up with.
Can we have your sheet?
Yeah, sure. That's it.
Thank you. I'll leave that with Kate. How about this table right here?
This is a suggestion, kind of wrapped in a question. The Reston Association has been able to obtain permission from VDOT to clear certain areas, correct?
We're in the process.
You're in the process. Does that permission cover you from liability at that point? Once you have that permission, are you then indemnified somehow?
Actually, it's kind of the reverse. We have to indemnify VDOT in an odd way, but for us to be covered, for our employees to be covered to do that work, we have to have the actual written authority to be on their property. So that's why I said earlier today that we're exploring that right now, and we can use that as a model to share with others.
So my suggestion would be, can Reston Association sponsor a process by which a cluster might be able to identify a segment of VDOT property and that they would like to take care of, but they would need that permission, the same as Reston Association has achieved it. Could an individual cluster achieve that same permission for a certain segment? Could the association sponsor some sort of process that would allow us to go through that with VDOT in some sort of consistent manner?
I think that's an excellent suggestion for us to work with VDOT and explore. Because we're trying to find answers to all that as well. Yeah. This is the first time we've done that. I'm not giving it to him. Who's speaking from this table?
You're the only one with that idea.
You don't want to be the only table.
Okay.
Without an idea, right? An official idea.
We have a very good idea, but I have one other idea, and that would be for, it's just a communication piece for Reston to, because I know there is a process, to reach out to cluster presidents and inform them of, collect each cluster's snow emergency plan, and also what Reston's doing to help that. Just give all the cluster presidents the information that's been gathered here tonight.
a good idea. We have the ability to do that.
Hey. Larry. Come back here later.
One idea is to ask the VDOT or the state, and this is a long-term thing, I know, big picture, when they redesign roadways and sidewalks to have engineered space in between the roadway and the sidewalk to store the snow, or to store the snow in parking areas as opposed to the sidewalks and pathways, just to change the design guidelines.
So in your discussions with VDOT, you talked about the indemnification and liabilities between Reston employees and VDOT, right? Is there anything preventing you from expanding that to say Reston wants the permission to take care of snow removal on all VDOT sidewalks, and that we want permission to have Reston employees as well as volunteers to do that work, and have an umbrella agreement that covers the volunteers and the employees of Reston?
That's an excellent suggestion.
In our discussions, we can certainly approach it from that perspective.
And then, so the next step is, do we have the equipment and volunteers, right? So I think the volunteer issue is probably a big one. But I'm sure there's a lot of people around Reston that have snow blowers. That they do their sidewalk, and an hour later, the snow blower goes back in the garage, right? Would there be the possibility of renting those snow blowers from people in the community who want to volunteer their snow blowers to the cause, and Reston picks up the money and pays them like $20 an hour to use their snow blower?
Either that, or hopefully they volunteer the use of that snow blower so that we don't have to increase dues to pay for that. But I like the concept.
Maintenance issues and everything else, right? So one of the ideas we kicked around here was, let's have Reston buy snow blowers and park them in the communities, and somebody's garage is willing to park Reston's snow blower in their garage, provided they can use it to clear their own garage. You might get some volunteers, but the kind of consensus we had on our table is nobody's going to do that because we don't have garages or they're too small. So there are people out there that do have them. Is there a way we can tap into that as a, that capacity that we have here in Reston and doing that?
It's a good idea.
And the other is, is there the capability of Reston owning snow blowers, having some sort of vehicle that can deliver those snow blowers to communities, with the understanding that when they drop it off, there is a particular place that that community has to clean up, and you give them 3 hours to do it. They can use that snow blower any way they want to for that 3 hours, provided they get that one piece of property cleaned up, which might be a VDOT property. Then you might have people come out and say, we got 5 or 6 people here who are elderly, they can't snow their driveways, we as volunteers want to clean it up, but nobody wants to sit there with a snow shovel and put in half the snow and shovel for 4 hours, right? But if you have a snow blower, you might do 5 or 6 of your neighbors' driveways who are, incapable of doing that if they had a snow blower. So if Reston had a pool of snow blowers, and the community could call up and reserve those in exchange for, we'll do the VDOT property as well, and you might have people that might jump out and volunteer to do this.
It's a good idea.
Other than that, we talked about building a dome.
Oh my God.
That was space heaters.
A giant bubble over Reston.
I just want to add a note of caution with respect to the suggestion that was made. While it's a very good suggestion, it has huge implications for Reston's insurance and Reston's liability, and those need to be explored very carefully.
Absolutely.
And we are doing that as we have these discussions, so we're in close contact with our insurance carriers.
The interface of the use of property that is not Reston associations, the use of volunteers who are not employees, and the interface with VDOT and perhaps even the county are all very, very complex situations for insurance and liability.
They are. We don't want too much of that to inhibit us from doing what we need to get things cleared, but we definitely are cognizant of that, so I appreciate that.
I would think it's going to be far cheaper for Reston to contract for that than to have the 250 communities contract for it, and have them pay for it. It's going to be a lot more expensive. So I'd rather see it rolled into your budget and then raise everybody's dues $5, whatever it happens to be.
Will you come back at budget time?
I'm happy to help you with your budget.
Are there any other questions or suggestions before we finish up? All righty, well, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. It's been a great discussion. There's a lot to chew on, to blow around.
Oh, no pun intended.
Yeah, right. Again, if you have an idea that you think of afterwards, member_services@reston.org. And then there are forms on the table, I think, for ideas as well. And I want to thank turn those in, please, the sheets that Ken just held up. And I want to thank Bill and Brian and Mike and the others that came from the county and so forth. Okay. So let's give them a round of applause. And I think because we held this meeting, it's not going to snow, right? There you go. The Farmers Almanac, I believe, said there's a distinct possibility, but yes, it did. I don't know who follows that. So thank you all for coming out and have a good evening.